Staff Cenk Uygur, special forces have crossed the border of Lebanon and have conducted raids.
CNN has learned of cross-border commando raids by Israel into Lebanon, into the southern part of the country. These raids back and forth could be a sign that a larger ground invasion could be coming. Obviously, there have been...
It seems that Loner wants war crimes done smiley left-wing face of Benny Gantz instead of the angry right-wing face of Bibi. Francesco, you're so boring. I can't express just how fucking dull these critiques... go fuck off. It's not my fault you were tragically born with no personality, okay? Fuck me.
Airstrikes on Beirut for days now. Let's get right to CNN Chief National Security Analyst and anchor Jim Sciutto, who is in Tel Aviv. Jim, these raids, what do they show and what do they tell us?
Yeah. Well, John, you could call these shaping operations, smaller special forces raids, as well as just the barrage of airstrikes that we've seen over the last several days, not just taking out Hezbollah leadership, but going after firing positions, missile launch sites, missile and rocket storage sites in southern Lebanon, would all be part of laying the groundwork for a broader ground incursion or small-scale invasion, whatever language you use. So one can say that those operations have already begun. And keep in mind what the Israeli goal here is, as stated publicly. We're not guessing about this. Israel's goal, as officials have described, is to move Hezbollah back from the border. And to do that, they seem to be making it clear they don't just intend to do damage to Hezbollah forces along the border, but push them back. The typical dividing line is the Litani River, about 10 miles back from the border. So that when you have the Israeli defense minister go speak to Israeli forces now massing on the northern border and use this phrase, "we will employ all the capabilities at our disposal," that's quite clear public signaling about what may very well be the next step. And I think you could see these special operations raids, as well as the bombing and the strikes we've seen in recent days, as part of that same ground operation.
Jim, what is now known about Hezbollah as it is currently constituted, their will and ability to carry out retaliation?
You know what, John? I think to some degree in recent days and weeks, if you go back, for instance, to the pager attack, as well as the killing on Friday of Nasrallah, we've seen something of a piercing...
Do you believe Nasrallah was telling the truth when he said the rockets would stop when the fighting in Gaza stops? Probably, but he was never really that... I think we can guess. He was never that clear about what he meant by the fighting stops, right? Like if he would have been... For example, if Hamas surrendered and allowed some third party to come in and rebuild the place, do you think Nasrallah would consider that a ceasefire and be like, just call it a day? I don't know. He probably, given the fact that Nasrallah never really wanted a ground invasion, we knew that from 2006 as well. I think Nasrallah made a mistake when he decided to tie his fate to what happened in Gaza, because he was basically leaving his fate in the hands of Netanyahu and Sinwar, two people who don't want to stop fighting anytime soon. So it's like...
of the bubble of Hezbollah's military capabilities. As advertised, this was Iran's strongest proxy weapon in the Middle East.
Would Israel technically be declaring war on Lebanon if they invaded? I don't really know how it works with non-state actors if you're ever declaring war. Like, Israel's already in a state of war, but is it really... Because does the war start when Hezbollah attacks Israeli military sites? Does it start when those attacks cross a certain... when Israel hits back? Does it start when a certain threshold is reached? I have no idea.
and against Israel, its strongest piece of that ring of fire around Israel. We talked to great length about the many tens of thousands of missiles and rockets, etc. But now, in just a few days' time, Israel has not only dismantled its leadership right up to the very top, but it's taken out a lot of those very missiles, which raises questions as to whether, even if a decision were made by Hezbollah,
Lots of U.S. wars were technically undeclared. Yeah, it's because you need Congress to declare a war. And some presidents are just like, okay, we're just going to do some special operation. I don't know. There's a whole thing about that, yeah.
carry out a sizable retaliation, who would make that decision, and how would they communicate that to field commanders to then carry it out? It's not clear that they have the capability to do that. And I don't mean to underestimate Hezbollah's remaining arsenal or the threat, but the blow that Israel has struck in recent days really raises questions as to what they're capable of. And we should also keep in mind Iran's public comments, which has been to say, we're kind of leaving this to Hezbollah to retaliate. We're effectively sitting this one out. Not to minimize Iran's own capabilities, but at least from the public messaging standpoint, they seem to be keeping their powder dry as well.
It is something that absolutely bears watching. Is Hezbollah on its heels as much as it seems, at least from everything we see and hear? Jim Sciutto, it's great to have you there as our eyes and ears. Thank you so much. Sarah?
All right, this morning the U.S. is preparing its military as fears grow that Iran may be planning retaliatory attacks. CNN's Arlette Saenz is at the White House with more on how the Biden administration is sort of viewing all of this at the moment, and they're meeting at this very moment. What are you learning, Arlette?
Well, Sarah, President Biden is hoping to prevent this situation from escalating into a wider regional conflict that could engulf the region. That is something that the administration has feared and really tried to work to prevent for the past year. Now, a U.S. official tells CNN that one major area of concern right now is the possibility that Iran could be planning an attack in the wake of Israel's killing of Hamas leader Hassan Nasrallah just last Friday. So the U.S. is working with Israel on its defenses, this U.S. official said, hoping that a joint defense and a change in the U.S. military posture in the region could potentially ward off a potential attack. Now, this official did not outline what an Iranian attack would look like or specify the exact moves that the U.S. could take. But the Pentagon, in a statement on Sunday, did stress that if Iran...
She said Hamas leader. That's true. Because Hamas has people in Lebanon. Because of the Palestinian camps. Yeah. I think they killed a Hamas leader in Lebanon and also 3 PFLP guys. So, you know what? Maybe I should retract my statement from that fucking crazy person on Twitter who said that the only reason the PFLP aren't popular is because Israel keeps killing all of them. Oh, no. Yeah, and apparently, I don't know if this is definitely true, but potentially, oh yeah, the Hamas leader who was killed in Lebanon was a UN employee. He'd been on, oh yeah, Fateh al-Sharif. He'd been under an investigation and on administrative leave since March. Accused of coordinating with Hezbollah. Did she say Hamas leader Hassan Nasrallah? Oh, that's a misspeak then. That's stupid.
or any of its partners or proxies tries to use this moment to target either American personnel or American interests.
Is Nasrallah Palestinian? Nope. He's Lebanese. He's from Beirut. That's why he talks like that, partially.
The U.S. would respond to defend the American people. The Pentagon has noted that they have significant capabilities in the region, including a carrier strike group, and they are also working to increase the readiness of U.S. troops who could mobilize to the region. Now, President Biden on Saturday convened a meeting of his national security team along with Vice President Kamala Harris to assess the situation in the Middle East and also talk about the readiness of U.S. military forces. And just yesterday, he stressed to reporters that he believes
He's Jordanian. Okay.
an all-out war must be avoided. Take a listen.
Can an all-out war in the Middle East be avoided? It has to be. We really have to avoid it.
Biden!
We've already taken precautions relative to our embassies and personnel who want to leave. But we're not there yet, but we're working like hell with the French and many others to see this avoid. Thank you.
That last line there is a reference to the U.S. hope that there could be some type of diplomatic solution to try to return Israeli and Lebanese civilians back to their homes. President Biden also said he does plan to speak with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu soon, though officials have not detailed how soon that conversation might happen. But Biden making very clear there that he wants to take whatever steps possible to try to ensure that this war does not spill out into a wider regional conflict that would engulf the whole region.
Arlette Saenz, thank you so much for reporting there from the White House. Kate?
And with us now to talk much more about all of this is a former IDF spokesperson, retired Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus.
Oh, it's him.
Thank you so much
Big
for
face.
coming in. It's good to see you. So this new reporting that Israeli special forces have been carrying out targeted raids into southern Lebanon, gathering intelligence ahead of a possible ground incursion. From your experience, if this is happening, do you think a ground incursion is inevitable?
Well, nothing is inevitable.
My question remains, is Lonerbox simping for Israel still regarding the Lebanon situation, including the terrorist pager attack and the bombs that kill innocents as well as Hezbollah leaders? I think the pager attacks basically proved to me that people who oppose Israel's actions and accuse them of war crimes and genocide and all that shit really don't actually care about the conduct. It seems that even if you make sure that about as many of your targets are militants as possible, given how Hezbollah fights, then some people will still oppose it and call it terrorism. Just because I think the real reason that people like UL call it terrorism is because they think that Israel shouldn't be allowed to fight with Hezbollah at all. That basically Hezbollah are allowed to terrorize Jewish people, Arabs, and Druze alike with impunity, as long as they keep a few civilians near them while they do it. That's it. That's your position.
First of all, good morning to you, and thanks for having me. Nothing is inevitable if at this stage ceasefire agreements or talks would be successful, and the French and the Americans would get Hezbollah to agree to implement Security Council Resolution 1701 and move beyond the Litani River, then no such ground operations would be necessary. Israeli civilians would be able to move back to their homes, and I think Israel would be very happy to avail itself to other threats that it has against its national security, unfinished business in Gaza and elsewhere. So no, this is definitely something that can be avoided, but as the trajectory is now, it looks as if nobody's really making it something that can be avoidable, and Israel, as a sovereign country,
This is the guy in Pierce. Yeah, he was the guy who said that. I think someone said, how would you feel if Hezbollah did a pager attack to the IDF? And he was like, yeah, bring it on. Like it would be, I think he said something about how it would be refreshing if they actually were able to target militants more accurately. But, oh dear.
Has a responsibility towards its people to allow them to go home safely. And I think the operations and what you refer to, the information, is part of making that happen and taking the necessary preparations in order to bring their civilians home.
Okay. So it's like basically every fucking clue that you need for anticipating a wider ground invasion. The problem with that is I just don't like, what the fuck is their what is it? What's the goal of that? Like militarily, I don't understand. Like, I don't really understand what they think they can do there. I think dismantling Hamas's military is one thing, and it took them 10 or 11 months to do it. Barely. Hamas is still an issue in Gaza. Hezbollah, even despite all the achievements, like, you're not changing the fact that you've got much harder terrain to fight in, you've got a much more sophisticated tunnel system, you've got much more experienced fighters running around, and you also have a civilian population there that is basically going to be ungovernable without violence. Like, the Shiites are not going to And even if the Lebanese government wants to do it, then the only way they get to do it is if they do it without Israeli help. Because if the Lebanese government starts collaborating with Israel, there's no fucking chance that anyone in the south is going to tolerate like that them as a governing body. Because they'll be the collaborators. They'll be the ones who are like doing a deal with the devil.